Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. My name's Zoe Reid. I am the Graduate Recruitment Manager at Osbourne Clarke, and today I'm going to be talking you through how to ace your law applications. In terms of the structure of this session, what I'm going to do is give you a very brief overview about Osborne Clarke as a firm, and then we're going to look into more detail about what a typical application process involves and what exactly it is that law firms are looking for. In terms of the focus, we're going to look at the online application phase and also a little bit around the assessments phase. And there should be plenty of time at the end of the session for you to ask questions. On that note, please do feel free to pop questions into the platform as we go through. I will answer all of them at the end. So if anything comes up as I'm going through the slides, please do feel free to submit those questions as we go through this session. So a little bit about Osborne Clarke. As you can see from this slide, we are an international law firm. So have 3 offices here in the UK, in Bristol, London and Reading. And that's where I'm actively involved in the recruitment of trainee solicitors. But our trainees and lawyers work internationally. And as you can see here, we have a presence throughout Europe, Asia and also the US. So very much working with our clients on multi-jurisdictional matters. Talking of clients, we work across 8 key sectors. So all of our clients will come to us for advice on the basis of our sector expertise. And as you can see here, they're very fast moving sectors. So things like tech, media and communications, life sciences, clean energy and utilities, they're really important for our clients. And we have a particular strength in all of these 8 areas. And we're also focused on 3 other areas which cut across all of the sectors that our clients are based in. So having a focus on digitalisation, decarbonisation, and also urban dynamics, which is how people move around cities, how companies work within cities, linked to the future of work, electric vehicles, all that kind of stuff. So they are the 3 transformations that we focus on that transect all of the sectors. So very interesting and as I say, cutting edge work. So looking more into detail now about what a typical law firm application process involves. It's going to vary from firm to firm, but by and large, you will find that the assessment processes can be clustered into these 3 main phases. So the first phase is always an online application form or application submission of some description. So there will be some firms that use application forms where you're given a set of prescribed questions to run through. There will be some firms that require you to submit a CV and a cover letter, so outlining the reasons why you are interested in a training contract or a vacation scheme at that particular firm. Some firms may also use psychometric tests at this stage, so could be an online verbal reasoning test, a Watson-Glaser test, numeracy, situational judgment. Every firm will tell you exactly what those tests are on their application form, but it's always worthwhile having these processes and steps in the back of your mind as you go through, because it's really important that you satisfy all of the requirements set by the firm in order for your application to be considered. Once the recruiter has reviewed the online application form, you will normally move through into an assessment centre phase. Again, this is a mixture of assessments, and you will find that some firms will run them virtually, some will run in person, some may have 2 or 3 steps, some might have just 1 step. But normally an assessment centre would include an interview, perhaps further psychometric tests, some written assessments. They may include presentations, group exercises, lots of different types of exercises to test your skills in different situations. If you're successful through an assessment phase, most firms will have a vacation scheme at the end of that, and that's where we would assess you in the office working as a trainee. So again, you might find that there are further assessed exercises as part of the vacation scheme, but all of these processes are really designed to get to know you as an individual, the skills that you can bring to the firm. And yeah, just get to know you a little bit better to see if you're going to thrive in that environment. So looking first of all at the online application phase, because that's the first part of this journey for you. What is it that law firms are actually looking for in the online application stage? And broadly speaking, we are looking for your understanding of the firm. So understanding what the law firm that you're applying to actually does in terms of legal specialism, what areas of sectors, organisations that you are interested in, and that they align with the law firm that you're applying to. We're also looking to find out more about your motivation for pursuing a legal career. So, what is it about law that's really attractive to you? Why do you think that that is the right career for you? We're also looking for evidence that you understand what it takes to be a successful lawyer in terms of the skills that you need to showcase. So, linking that to any work experience that you have, any other extracurricular activities is going to be really important in the online application stage. We're also looking, as this is an online written submission, for you to demonstrate a very clear and succinct writing style. At this phase of the selection process, all we have is the written submission to be able to decide whether we want to see you in an assessment centre exercise. So it's really important that you demonstrate a very clear and succinct and coherent writing style in the online application stage. So first things first, you've done some research into the legal profession and you're now thinking about starting to submit and practice and prepare for your online application. So first things first, it's really important that you do spend some time preparing to complete your application form and doing research into the firms so that you can really get a sense of who they are, what they can offer you in terms of training and experience, and also what you can offer to the law firm is going to be really important. So, really spending some time reflecting on your experience, what you want from your future career, where you want to be located, what kind of clients you want to work with, is going to be really, really important because when you get your training contract offer, firms are not looking for you just to come and train and then leave at the end of 2 years. They want to know that the person that they're offering a training contract to sees themselves working within the firm for the longer term. So it's really important that you connect your research to your personal ambitions and submit applications to those firms that are really of interest to you and are going to keep you interested for a long time. In terms of resources that are useful, I've clumped these recommendations into three main areas. So, of course, um, targetjobs is a really excellent resource and has lots of information on there that actually goes beyond just law, but helping you with advice on assessment centre preparation and lots of other things as well. But to research law firms, you really need to try and get under the skin of what they're all about. So following them on various social media platforms will really help bring the firm to life, particularly through Instagram and TikTok. So lots and lots of content there about what's going on within the firm. Typically in an kind of outside of the work environment. So just showing what it would be like if you were to work within that firm. LinkedIn is obviously a fabulous resource for keeping up to date with what is going on the business side of things. So definitely would recommend following some firms through LinkedIn. The next category is around legal directories. So publications like the Legal 500 and Chambers and Partners will write recommendations on lawyers and their specialisms and how they are ranked against other law firms. So, if there's a particular area that you're really interested in, doing some research through these two publications will help you make sure that you are applying to firms that definitely do the work that you're trying to qualify into, but also will have the sufficient expertise within the teams to be able to teach you well. The third category of resources I've put as legal press. So this is where you can really keep up to date with everything that's going on in the legal profession. So key things around pro bono, around deals, around partner hires, people that are moving between firms. That's always a really good thing to research and keep on top of as well. So you've completed your research, you've got your short list of firms that you want to apply to, and you're now ready to really sit down and start to complete the online application form. It's really important when you make a start in the application form that you get the basics right. And people always, when I'm running these presentations, say, "Oh, but of course we're going to put the contact details in correctly. Of course we're going to list our academics properly." But unfortunately, every year there is still a good number of people that forget these basic and simple steps. So please do remember to enter your contact details correctly. Just recently, I've been running a selection process for another team, and I've already had 7 emails bounce back because the candidates haven't entered their email address correctly in the online submission. So unfortunately, I can't contact them to invite them to the next stage in the process. So these simple steps are really important to make sure that you get right. When you're talking about your work experience, this is a question I get asked quite a lot. What we're really looking for you to evidence is your transferable skills and how they're going to be relevant to a legal career, rather than talking through the jobs and responsibilities that you had when you were working within a particular organisation. So within this section, really do focus in on your transferable skills, because this is what's going to showcase your abilities and your aptitude to potential employers. So within this, I'm also often asked, what are your top 5 things that you're looking for in a trainee? And my answer to this question is always that we're looking for different people with a different blend of experience. So it's really important before you make a start on your application form to really reflect on what your strengths are and what you think are going to make you a really successful solicitor. So it could be any number of these skills that are based on this slide, or it could be something altogether different. It's more important that you spend time talking to us about what makes you special, what makes you stand out from other candidates, rather than trying to bend your experience to fit with a particular set of skills that you think a potential employer is looking for. Because as I've said a moment ago, the diversity of skills and experience is hugely important to a firm, particularly if they have a really broad range of practice areas on offer. The skills required to be a successful corporate lawyer, for example, are quite different to those that are required to be a successful advisory or disputes lawyer. So having that breadth of interest and experience within the firm is important to our future. So please do not try to fold yourself into a particular set of skills, but really take some time to reflect on what your strengths are and tell us about those. Another common misconception is that you need to have legal work experience to prove that you're committed to a career in law. And that's absolutely not the case. So at Osbourne Clarke, we don't require any candidates to have any prior legal work experience before they're offered a vacation scheme or a training contract with the firm. What we want to find out about is the things that you are really passionate about, and the skills and strengths that you can bring to the firm. And quite often you won't get those from doing legal work shadowing. You'll have much more experience to be able to talk to us about from things that you pursue outside of legal work shadowing. So again, take a moment to think about all of the things that you do, your extracurricular activities, any volunteering that you're involved with, sports clubs and student societies, because they're going to be the things that you need to include as evidence. Also, don't forget to include that you've engaged with firms through virtual events like this or any in-person events that you've attended with employers, because that will show that you're investing your own time into researching the profession and finding out about particular firms. From my perspective, I also like to see if people have engaged with firms that are not Osborne Clarke. So don't be afraid to list other law firms or legal services providers within your application form, because again, it shows that you're committing your own time to researching the profession and developing yourself. And that's a really key attribute for people to have. So when you're approaching the application questions themselves, I would always recommend to people that they use a separate document to jot down ideas and start to draft responses. It's really important that you remember to take note of any word limits, because when you copy and paste back into the application form, if you've exceeded the word limit, it will automatically cut out those final sentences or words if you've gone over. And it's really important within the application questions that you focus on you. So tell us all about you, what your interests are, what inspires you, why you want to become a lawyer, because that's how we're going to evaluate your submission, is looking at what you've done and whether you have the blend of skills to be successful. It's really important that you evidence the skills that you've mentioned within your application form. So using some examples as per the previous slide will just help you to showcase that you have invested that time in developing your skills. Another element of our application process is around commercial awareness. So commercial awareness for us is demonstrating that you understand how industries and businesses work, and that you can have a view on what is going on in the world and take a position. It's also about understanding that you that you have an understanding of the legal sector, and that you recognise that law firms are businesses as well. So we are not just a group of lawyers that are advising clients. We are also a business that have a number of different functions within the law firm, and all of those things contribute to making the firm successful. So that's why it's really important that you have that commerciality. You won't be able to advise clients effectively in a particular sector if you don't understand what's going on and what pressures those clients are working under. So that's why you need to make sure that you keep on top of reading and find topics that you are genuinely interested in, so that you want to invest your own time. So commercial awareness is really important, because as you progress through your career, it will help you to predict future trends, because you know what's gone on before. And that's what clients are ultimately going to pay you for when you progress through your career through to partner. It will also help you to develop competitive advantage, because you have the knowledge and expertise to be able to clearly advise clients on what's going on in their sector. So, how can you develop commercial awareness? Commercial awareness isn't something that just happens by reading one article in a particular publication. It grows over time. So, it is really important that you invest in keeping on top of what's going on in the business world. A really easy way to do that is to keep up to date with Google Alerts, LinkedIn, listening to podcasts, so that you can do that quite actively. Listening to podcasts when you're on your commute to university or to work is a handy investment of your time. And it's really important that you follow stories and themes that you have a genuine interest in. It's much less of a slog if you are following themes and topics that resonate with you and that you have an interest in. If you're trying to follow a topic that doesn't particularly pique your interest, you'll find it much harder to keep on top of what's going on. So do make sure that you follow things that you have a genuine interest in. As you continue to research and read around a particular topic, it's really important that you develop your own views on what's going on, what's going to happen next. And you don't have to have the same view as everybody else. Sometimes a point of debate in in an interview is far more interesting for both you and the interviewer, if you can have a more active discussion than just agreeing with things. As long as you can back yourself and showcase why you believe what you believe, that's really important. Try to get some experience or exposure to industry, so coming along to presentation evenings, virtual sessions, just to help you to really clarify your understanding, and use your connections to ask questions. So if there's a particular area of work or deal that you've seen that you're really interested in, why not get in touch with the person who's listed in the press release to see if you can find out a little bit more about that. If people have the time, they will reply to you. And I know from speaking to a number of our lawyers and trainees that people do reach out to them fairly regularly, and they're more than happy to talk about their experience. So do use your connections as well. When you're doing your research, another really handy way to help develop a broader commercial awareness is to use both the SWOT and PESTLE analysis methods. This just helps you to apply different lenses to a particular scenario and will help you to develop a more rounded commerciality. So do use those when you're doing your researching. So a couple of tips here for answering commercial awareness questions, and this would be relevant for both online applications and also if you were invited to an interview. So do make sure that the topics that you're covering are current and that they're also relevant to the firm. Explain why you find things interesting. And remember, most importantly, that lawyers need to be able to communicate in very clear and succinct language. So do avoid using technical language, acronyms, and jargon. Often the first person reviewing your application form is also not a lawyer. So it's really important that you can speak in plain language so that your answer is accessible to everybody. Within the commercial awareness questions, I would also advise to avoid using bullet points. Within this section of the application form, we're really looking for you to use continuous prose so that you can showcase your writing ability to us. Couple of final touches here. It's really important if you can ask somebody else to read through your whole submission to double check it for errors. This is really, really important. And you'll find that somebody else will bring a fresh pair of eyes to the review process and will be quite critical in making sure that you haven't put any silly mistakes, little typos in there. It's really important as well that you take your time. So you're not going to be able to submit a fabulous application form by dedicating just an hour one evening to sitting down and doing it from start to finish. So do take your time when you're doing your research. But on the flip side of that, don't leave the submission until the very last day. Most firms' application forms are open for 6 to 12 weeks. So there is plenty of time for you to apply. But if you leave it until the last minute, because it has been open for a long time, you'll find that most firms won't grant any extensions if there are any technical issues that are not their fault. And most importantly, remember to be yourself throughout all of these processes. We really want to learn about you. So stay authentic to yourself, your motivations, and your interests. Moving now on to the assessment phase, I'm going to very quickly just talk through a couple of tips. They're quite common questions that I get asked as I'm going through events and approaching assessment centre season. So hopefully these will stand you in good stead if you are invited to an assessment centre. So the reason why we use assessment centres is really to see how you respond to different situations, tasks and tests. And it gives us an opportunity to observe you in real time. the exercises that we ask our candidates to complete are all relevant to the roles that you would be applying for. So you would find that the exercises for a trainee solicitor and vacation scheme opportunity would very much focus on business and commercial awareness. We're not expecting people to know the law when they come to us, because often you're much earlier on in your studies and wouldn't be able to answer around legal technicalities. But what we do expect candidates to have is that commerciality, an understanding of what's going on in the business world. So we would expect you to bring that to the assessment centre process. So, as I mentioned earlier, a typical assessment centre could involve a really wide range of different exercises. In terms of Osborne Clarke's process, we run a two-step assessment centre. So the first phase is an online assessment centre where we would ask you to do a research exercise and present your findings back to us. And we would then invite a proportion of candidates into a second phase assessment centre, which would run in person. And in that phase, we would run an interview, a group exercise, some psychometric tests, and give you an opportunity to come in and have a look around the office. All firms will give you a heads up as to what's involved in each section, so that you can prepare appropriately. But there's nothing wrong with trying to get ahead and making sure that you know what's coming so that you can prepare appropriately. So what is it that we're actually assessing during this phase? Bringing this slide back again, we're really looking for your evidence of transferable skills. So do you have the skills that are relevant to the role? And you'll be aware that, you know, as you're going through interviews, that we're really looking at your commercial awareness, your ability to organize yourself, your communication skills, how adaptable you are, perhaps how resilient you are. Whereas in a group exercise, we're very much focusing on your ability to work as part of a team, as well as your analytical skills and your communication skills. So every exercise will have a slightly different focus. And as I've said a few times through this presentation already, it's really important that you are yourself. So make sure that you just bring the very, very best person, very, very best version of yourself to the assessment centre. So within a group exercise, typically you'll find that these are quite small groups. So we don't use a group exercises any bigger than 6. And often you're working in a simulation that's very similar to the type of work that you would be involved with within the firm. So it could be reviewing documents, working towards a recommendation, negotiating with colleagues, a whole different suite of scenarios that you would be given on the day. But most importantly, you need to demonstrate that you can collaborate, that you are organised with your time, that you have commerciality, that you are able to analyse information and problem solve, and that you have really clear communication skills. So regardless of the scenario, always have those transferable skills in the back of your mind and make sure that you show the very best side of yourself. Within interviews, again, a number of firms will run these in different ways because there are so many different styles of interview questions available. So it's quite difficult for you perhaps to prepare as appropriately as you would like if you were approaching an interview. Um, the only thing I could recommend is really making sure that you've reflected on your experience, and that you've got some strong examples that you feel confident that you could talk about during an interview. You'll find that competency and situational exercises will largely rely on you giving very similar answers. Something like a case study would be quite difficult for you to prepare for, but just make sure that you bring your very best analytical mind. Strengths, again, very similar to competency. So thinking about what you enjoy doing, what your preferred working style is, and how that's going to make you successful. And technical knowledge, if you do have any legal work experience and legal knowledge to be able to bring to the table, make sure that that's current and up to date. But you'll tend to find that more technical questions are reserved for more technical disciplines or those kinds of questions once you've become qualified. Within the graduate recruitment process, interviewers are really looking for evidence of potential. And the way that we do that is through a genuine assessing if the candidate has a genuine interest in the role in the firm. If you have that commercial and business awareness, if you can think on your feet, communicate clearly and succinctly, and linked to the genuine interest in the role, we're really assessing your motivation and commitment. And trying to prepare for your interview is really going to be key and helping you to feel more confident going into your assessment centre. So, again, spending time doing your research into the firm, finding out what they've been involved with most recently. Refamiliarise yourself with your application form, and really think about the skills and experience that you have that you want to convey across during your interview and assessment centre process. And that's how you're going to stand out. So, really thinking about what makes you you, what your passions and interests are, and being able to clearly talk about those at interview is what's going to stand you in good stead. If you're asked any competency-based questions, the STAR method can sometimes help you to present a more structured answer. So having this in the back of your mind rather than going into your interview and saying, the situation was this, the task was this, the action was this, and the result was this. Just having that structure in the back of your mind to help frame the conversation may help you within your preparation. And during the interview, just try to make sure that your answers are well structured. Try not to waffle or ramble too much. It's natural at the beginning of the interview to feel nervous and perhaps slightly be off topic as you go through. But as you warm up, please try to make sure that you are a bit more structured in your approach. Try to be clear and concise, and talk about things that you're interested in. I've said this a few times throughout the course of this session so far, but it's really important that you do talk about things that you're interested in. And it's also okay to talk about your experience at other companies and law firms. So we don't expect you to only have researched Osborne Clarke and only have applied to Osborne Clarke. People have a wide range of interests, and it's important that you get those across in your interview. If you don't know something, don't panic. Always try. That's all we're looking for, is for people to try to answer the questions. And if you're not sure what's expected of you, be confident to clarify your understanding with the interviewer, because it may be that they can rephrase the question in a slightly different way, and then you can give the answer that's most relevant. Most importantly, in an interview, as hard as it might feel, try to relax. Remember that an interview really is just a conversation, and hopefully that will help you to feel more relaxed, and be yourself during the interview process. I've mentioned as well that we do use virtual assessment centres, and I know that a large number of firms have retained the virtual assessment centre as part of their process. So just a couple of tips here for virtual assessment centres. Make sure you're comfortable. Test your equipment before you log on to the assessment centre. Most platforms will allow you to log on and test the tech the day before. So if you do have any issues, make sure that you flag those with the law firm, rather than trying to log in 10 minutes before your assessment starts and panicking that you don't have everything up and running. Check your lighting and background as well so that people can actually see you rather than just a silhouette. And do try to dress as if you're going to an in-person assessment centre. So no pajamas or hoodies as much as it's cold. At the moment, try to impress and make sure that you show that you're taking these things seriously. It's also important that you turn off any notifications, so mobile phones, Teams, Zoom, any kind of instant messaging. Um, it's really distracting if you have those notifications coming through. And if you can, try to not read from notes. We can really tell when candidates are reading a set paragraph that they've already prepared in a virtual setting, as tempting as it is to have that note page in front of you. It does have quite an effect on your ability to engage with the people on the other side. So do leave any notes to one side and don't read from them, because we want to get to know you as a person, and it's very difficult if you're not engaged in the conversation that's happening. And that's my slide deck finished now. So I am going to flip over to the Q&A. I can see that there are lots of questions coming through. So I am going to go through these now. So some of the questions seem to come through that are related to our assessment centre process. And some are more general. So if I go with the first question, how would I describe Osborne Clarke? So Osborne Clarke is a international firm. It's very non-hierarchical. We work open plan, so everyone has the same desks. You learn a lot from where you're sitting, and everybody is great, very supportive, very friendly. So a great working environment. Um, Whilst that's fabulous, you do also need interesting work as well. So you will find that if you did come to Osborne Clarke, that you would have the right mix of support from the people within the firm, but also the right mix of work as well. So that for me is what makes it a fantastic place to work. Question here about timing. So alongside the SQE, when should people start applying for graduate schemes? So most firms will recruit 2 years in advance. So from this recruitment cycle, we are recruiting our 2026 trainee solicitor intake. So to be eligible for that, you would need to be either in the penultimate year of a law degree onwards or the final year of a non-law degree onwards, because you need to have a clear 2 years to be able to either complete the final year of your degree and the SQE studies and exams, which take a year each. Or if you're a non-law student, you need to have a year to complete the postgraduate diploma in law, and which takes about a year, and a year for your SQE studies. So wherever you are, you just need to make sure that you're able to start with the firm in 2 years' time. What resources would I recommend for non-law students? I think for resources, it's important that you do quite a lot of wide reading. So I mentioned earlier that social media is a really great place to get on top of what's going on within particular firms. There are also lots of publications like Law Careers Net and targetjobs, who have lots of resources available with regard to the legal sector, and also things like the Lawyer, Roll on Friday, Legal Cheek. Those kind of resources that are very much focused on the legal profession are also really good at making sure that you have an understanding of what's going on at the moment. talking to people as well. So if there are firms that you're particularly interested in, reach out to people. So reach out to trainees or the graduate recruitment team, or you might find that there's some events or webinars or talks going on within the particular firm that might be of interest to you as well. So just get involved and see what you can find online. Google is most definitely your friend here. Do I have any advice about the preparation for psychometric tests? Absolutely. With psychometric tests, practice, practice, practice. So try to get hold of as many practice tests as you can. There are a good number of them available online. I would also recommend that you complete the practice test that should be sent through to you by the test provider before you start the actual psychometric test itself. Um, Most often you'll find that people don't do very well because they're not familiar with the style of test. And it's important that you understand how you answer what is required of you. And you can only really get that from practicing the test from the provider themselves. So do some research. If you want to get into the detail, reach out to the graduate recruitment teams, and they should be able to tell you who their provider is so that you can find out more information. And from an Osborne Clarke perspective, I always share a link to the practice test with candidates as part of the invite to complete the assessment, so that you know what to do and what to expect before you sit the real assessment. So yeah, practice, 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 I'm afraid. A couple of questions about whether we accept applications from international students, and the answer to that is absolutely. We do hold a Tier 2 sponsor license, so we are able to sponsor candidates that require visa sponsorship to do a training contract in the UK. The only thing that we ask is that you're available to start with us in the 2 years' time. So you need to make sure that you are able to start and have sufficient time to perhaps complete the PGDL and the SQE training before you start. If you do have any questions about your specific timelines, please feel free to get in touch with me via email, and I'll very happily look at your timelines and let you know when you would need to apply. Question here about, from a first year student, how would you build up a CV and get prepared, ready to start applying in second year? So definitely spending time coming to webinars, going to events will really help you in the longer term. So all the time that you invest now in researching firms will help you when you come to second year. So try, if you can, to get along to events that are being run by the firms that you're interested in applying to. Start speaking to people, start following particular law firms so that you can keep up to date with what's going on. As I mentioned earlier, commercial awareness is not just a quick fix. It takes time to build up that bank of knowledge. So if you can invest in finding some topics that you're really interested in and following them over time, that will definitely pay off when you get into second year. Question here about our process. Do we hire on a rolling basis? No, we don't. So we review applications in their entirety once the deadline has passed. That's an Osborne Clarke specific thing. There are firms who recruit on a rolling basis, and so it's important when you're doing your research to work out which ones you need to apply to before others. But for us, yeah, we do everything once the deadline has passed. And following into another question that's just come through about the application process, we review the application form in its entirety. So there is no one section that holds more weight than others. So we look at the entire submission before deciding who we would like to invite through to an assessment centre. So it's not all about academics, it's not all about work experience, and it's not all about your commercial questions. They're all equal. There's not one section that trumps another. Another OC process question: can you apply to multiple vacation schemes at different offices, i.e. apply to both London and Reading? Unfortunately not. So we do ask candidates to make a decision at the very beginning as to which office they would like to be based in. So do apply to the office that you ultimately want to train in. To reassure you, all offices are equally as competitive as each other. So whilst our London office receives the most applications, we also take the most trainees in London. So it does all work out at about the same chance of getting a training contract at all of our offices. So just choose the one that you are most interested in applying to, because all of the offices are ever so slightly different in terms of the areas of specialism that you cover. A question: are you more likely to get a training contract straight after graduation or a few years after? I would say that people are ready when they're ready. So there are some people who are, on it and ready for a training contract as a penultimate year law student. There are other candidates who decide to go off and gain some experience because they think that having that under their belt will really help them in terms of their confidence and abilities going through an application process. And there's no right or wrong answer. Everyone's ready at their own pace. So please, if you are still at university and you're worrying that if you don't get a training contract in second year or final year, that's it for you, that's absolutely not the case. And often people will be more confident coming in if they've got some work experience, because they've got a lot more breadth to be able to talk about, and that's absolutely fine. Bear with me a second. I'm going to go back up to the top and see all the questions. Do I have any advice for second year students that are juggling the most difficult academic year and all the training contract applications at once? I think it's really important that you do what you can and what you feel capable of. If it's not working for you time wise, as I mentioned a moment ago, don't feel the pressure to get a training contract when you're in second year. It's more important that you graduate with a good degree than try to spread yourself too thinly. It's also important that you spend time researching law firms and make very targeted and specific applications rather than trying to apply to every law firm under the sun. When I talk to trainees that we've recruited, most of them will say that within this cycle that they were successful, they applied to no more than 5 law firms. So we're really targeted and very specific in the applications that they made. So you might find that by taking some of the volume out of your training contracts application cycle, that should free up a bit more time for you to be able to juggle things effectively. But equally, if you don't have time amongst all of your academics and extracurricular commitments, then that's okay. There's still plenty of time ahead of you to secure a training contract, so try not to worry too much. Question from a final year law student: can you still apply? Absolutely. So not all firms run as open an application process as we do. For us, we have a minimum entry requirement of penultimate year law onwards, but the key the key in that sentence is onwards. So you can apply as a final year student, as a graduate, or as somebody with a couple of years or 20 years work experience. So please don't be put off or worried about applying in your final year. Just a word of caution though, not, as I said, not all firms are the same as us. So please do check the recruitment pages of the firms that you're interested in applying to, because if they do have very set timelines or eligibility criteria, they should be incorporated onto the website. Just going to scroll through and see if there are any other questions. Okay, I think actually that I've covered all of the questions that have been submitted. So I am going to end the session slightly earlier. If you do have any other questions about the application process or expectations, please do feel free to get in touch. You can find me on LinkedIn or through the join.osborneclarke.com website. But thank you very much for listening to me today. Very, very best of luck in your applications, and I hope to see applications from some of you soon. Take care.